Happy Tuesday morning, everybody. Welcome into another edition of Morning Jocks. Conrad Van Order, Damian Mitchell here with you for another fantastic day, getting you up to date on everything going on in the world of sports and getting you set for the penultimate weekend of the college football season, as we got to get through these games before the magic that is rivalry week coming up next week. And obviously the Iron Bowl at the top of the list in terms of what's going to be getting the attention of not only many of us, but I would say the national college football media as well. So we've got a lot of time to look forward to what's coming up ahead, but we've got a lot of things going on, a lot of moving parts in the world of college football now. So we've got a lot of head coaching news, coaching carousel changes, and things to make note of and keep you up to date on. We also finally got to hear from DJ Durkin in Auburn. They enjoyed their bye week and got to hear from them and kind of how things have been going there on the Plains as they get ready for their second to last game of the season against Mercer. We got to hear more from Alabama and Kalen DeBoer as they try to bounce back from the Oklahoma loss and still find themselves a spot in the college football playoff. So we've got a lot going on in the world of sports. So let's hit the ground running today. We can start real quick. Last night, if you missed it, you had Monday Night Football going on, though. You had the Cowboys and the Raiders. And this was a game that it really wasn't a whole lot of a game, to be completely honest with you. So Dallas, they jumped out to a pretty big lead at halftime. So they scored 21 points in the second quarter to go up 24-9 at halftime there. And it really felt like once they went on that roll, you had a touchdown. I mean, Dak was just on fire at that point. He throws a touchdown to CeeDee Lamb, throws a touchdown to Jake Ferguson, and then throws a touchdown to George Pickens back to back there in the second quarter. And the Raiders just really had no answer for it and absolutely couldn't keep up. And that's not a huge surprise. The Raiders have been pretty rough this year, all things considered. But a really nice night for Dak Prescott. He goes 25 of 33, 268 through the air and 4 touchdowns. George Pickens was the leading receiver last night there for Dallas. He had 9 catches, 144 yards, and a touchdown. He was absolutely fantastic. Javonte Williams adds 93 yards. Again, you had CeeDee Lamb with a touchdown catch as well. Quinnen Williams, who had gotten traded over from the Jets here recently, of course, the former Alabama star, he had his best game of the season. He had 1.5 sacks last night, so a nice night for him as Dallas gets the 33-16 victory. And they moved to 4-5-1 on the season, and the Raiders, they moved to 2-8. So a rough year there for Pete Carroll and Geno Smith and company since taking over.
The Raiders stink.
Yeah, they're bad.
Their offensive line is atrocious. Like, they can't block a soul. And when you look at the pieces that they have as far as the skill positions, they're not bad. Like, they have some explosive capabilities.
Got the best tight end in the league.
Yeah, and their offensive line just can't. They just can't stop anybody. But I mean, you got to think Dallas over their bye week. They made all these different roster moves. And Quinnen Williams. I mean, I know New York is kind of just in complete rebuild, but letting him go to Dallas is just insane. Like, to have lost Micah Parsons on the edge and to get somebody as dominant as Quinnen Williams on the interior defensive line, like, Dallas really is kind of, I mean, they're trending in the right direction, but a lot of it has to go with, I mean, Las Vegas is just not, they're just not good. And the AFC West is already top heavy. They're just kind of dwindling down there at the bottom of just, maybe we can play spoiler for somebody that has, potential playoff chances, but they're just not, they're not a good football team. And Dallas made quick work of them.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So, yeah, Raiders, one of the worst teams in the league. Cowboys, not particularly great, but they're at least entertaining to watch, and I appreciate that.
They are.
So, and especially offensively, right? They like to throw that thing around a lot. So, big win there for the Cowboys as the Raiders fall back in the AFC West. The Cowboys still, I guess, technically alive for the playoffs. Going to need a lot of things to go their way, but, you could find crazier things have happened, as far as seeding goes there in the NFL. So they're currently in the 10th spot. Pretty funny. They're behind. So the Detroit Lions, after this weekend, they have now fallen out technically. Them and the Chiefs have both fallen out of the playoff race in the sense that if it ended today, both of those teams would miss the playoffs. But how about this? The Cowboys are now right behind the Carolina Panthers in terms of the pecking order for the playoffs.
And shout out to Bryce Young too.
Yeah, man. He had like 450 yards.
Yeah. I'm in one of my fantasy leagues. You could have two quarterbacks, and I have Patrick Mahomes and Matthew Stafford. And let's just say that who would have thought in this day and age that Bryce Young would have more points than both of those guys had combined. Just didn't expect that.
Yeah, a little bit of a surprise there.
Yeah, ended up taking that L in fantasy this week. So
hate to see that for you.
You do.
Yeah, you really do. You really do. So that's your update from last night, your recap of Monday Night Football there, as that puts a cap on another week of the NFL season. But let's turn our attention to some of the things that we heard yesterday now on the college football front, particularly with Alabama and Auburn. So you didn't get to hear a whole lot because, you have your weekly press conferences last week from both Kalen DeBoer and DJ Durkin. And so we'll start with Alabama because they go first. And in terms of the order of the day and how that all goes. But you didn't get to hear a whole lot, a lot of the same sentiments as after the game, disappointed. You heard from Ryan Grubb, and I mean, he straight up said it. That's a game, if we don't turn the ball over, we're winning that game. Things that we all are well aware of. Ryan Grubb, I thought, making more comments about Ty Simpson and just how he can't hold on to the ball, and he knows that, he knows the mistakes that he's making. It's just he's got to, that internal clock for him's kind of got to speed up a little bit so that he's not holding on to the ball and putting Alabama in those difficult situations. You heard, Kalen DeBoer, he talked a little bit about the Connor Talty situation and him, screaming at the long snapper after he missed the field goal and, kind of just trying to brush that off and put that in the past there for Connor Talty and the rest of the special teams unit. But not a whole lot of insight. Again, just a lot of kind of disappointment and, optimism that the team's going to respond the right way to adversity. So we'll let you hear this one cut from Kalen DeBoer, though. This is him just talking about his team's approach moving forward after that Oklahoma victory and how they can try to avoid another disappointing loss.
Disappointed in the outcome just from the game, and I guess the approach I can already see is dialed in. Like I told you, I know the character of this football team, and this is not a time to sit still. This is a time to keep moving forward, and we see areas that we can continue to improve on, but that's what we have done all season long. We continue to push, continue to go back to work, and these guys, again, they've shown how resilient they are, and you can see the want to and the fight, getting down early in the game the other night, I think, and how we continued to compete is exactly what you see in the big picture of this season and what these guys are all made up of.
So there you go. That's Kalen DeBoer on kind of the mindset of this team moving forward now as they, most likely, I guess, outside of the SEC championship, if you make it there, but most likely, the next time you suffer a loss this season, that's going to be it. The season's going to be over in terms of your pursuit of a national championship. So we will see how they can respond there. But a big part of that is, of course, not what they're going to have to do and respond against East Illinois this week. It's next week against Auburn in the Iron Bowl. And if you missed the news yesterday, we do know now it's going to be a night game there in Jordan-Hare Stadium. It's going to be a 6:30 p.m. kickoff on the Saturday after Thanksgiving. So what is that, 10 days from now? Something along those lines. But it's going to be a night game there in Jordan-Hare, so that's going to be exciting. We all know the atmosphere there is going to be pretty wild. So we'll see how Alabama prepares for that one. But we know Auburn, they're going to be ready in front of that home crowd to put a nice cap on the season and get not only to bowl eligibility, but also spoil the season of their rival. And a big question that we had going into this kind of 2-week period after the bye was, what are they going to do at the quarterback spot? Because Ashton Daniels really looked impressive against Vanderbilt a couple of weeks ago, but we knew that he was kind of on the fringe there with his red shirt and his eligibility, right? In the sense that if he played in Mercer and against Alabama, he was going to burn through that red shirt, and this was going to be it for him playing college football. You saw how good he looked against Vanderbilt, and whether it's him wanting to transfer somewhere else, him wanting to come back to Auburn, seemed like this was a player that was worth maybe giving another year to develop and see what he can do as a full-time starter somewhere. So this is DJ Durkin, him talking a little bit about Ashton Daniels and what decision they ultimately have made in terms of him and his eligibility.
I think the best thing for Ashton is to be able to preserve his redshirt year and be able to come back and play another year. I think it's tremendous for this program and also for him. I think he has great football ahead of him, and so we are going to do that. He will not play in this game so that he can keep that redshirt year. And again, I just think it's clearly the right thing to do.
So there you go. Ashton Daniels will not play against Mercer. He will play against Alabama, but obviously they are trying to, I guess, respect his wishes, obviously, of wanting to have a chance to play another year of football. And obviously you would rather have your best players for the Alabama game and not the Mercer game. No offense to the Bears. And then finally, that sets up an obvious question, right, Damian? Of, well, are we going to get Jackson Arnold or Deuce Knight at the quarterback position? This is DJ Durkin discussing those two guys and who will play on Saturday for Auburn.
Both those guys are going to play in this game, Jackson and Deuce, and we're going to go through the practice week and kind of sort out what exactly that looks like. But I met with them both yesterday. They are both tremendously excited about this. I feel like Deuce has a lot of great football ahead of him and hasn't had that opportunity. He's going to get that opportunity. And you could just tell a difference in we practiced last night. You could tell a difference in him right there. And I think the same with Jackson. Jackson's a tremendously talented guy. We're going to put together a great plan for both these guys to have success. And I told their teammates it's their job to rally around them too. And I know those guys will. They feel strongly about that. And so I'm looking forward to how the entire team responds behind those guys.
So there you go. Expect to see both of the quarterbacks for the Auburn Tigers on Saturday against Mercer, and it'll be good. You get to see kind of your first extent. I know we got to see Deuce Knight a little bit earlier in the season, but now that he's had more time to develop, but now, I mean, like you heard from Durkin there, right? It seems like he's got a little more of a pep in his step now because he understands, okay, this is my opportunity to, whether it's as the starter or as a backup coming in, maybe in the second half or what have you. This is his opportunity to go out there and show how far he's come in his first season here on the plains of Auburn. So I know a lot of people are going to be excited for that one. But we've got plenty of time to look forward to the matchups this weekend for Alabama and Auburn, and, of course, that Iron Bowl coming up next week. But what is going on in the college football coaching world? Some massive news, massive changes in the last 24 hours. We'll get you up to date, everything going on with Lane Kiffin, James Franklin, and more. That's coming up next here on JOX. 6:17 here on your Tuesday morning. Appreciate you tuning in to Morning Jocks each and every day. Conrad and Damien with you until 7 o'clock when we will hand you off to McElroy and Kublik in the morning as they will continue the college football conversation. Then three-man front coming up. We'll be out at Social Taco in Homewood today. And if you missed it, or maybe you don't listen to the three-man front show, which you should if you don't. But we are doing a food drive. We are partnering up with one of our sister stations in Hot 107.7, and we are partnering together to help some families out in need this holiday season. And so today we're going to be up there at Social Taco accepting donations and having some fun with our listeners like we do each and every week. And then tomorrow we'll be doing a special event up here outside the station trying to raise money and raise, canned goods, things like that we can donate to families in need this holiday season. So hope to see you out there. Hope to see you be a part of things. And, of course, we always love being able to interact with our JOX listeners. And we know so many of you are so very generous as well. And we just appreciate being able to give back to the community with the help of you guys. So that's kind of what you have coming up for you today right here on JOX. But let's get to the big kind of buzz, I guess, around the world of college football. And that, of course, is the coaching carousel, as it doesn't stop in terms of coaches being fired and then coaches being rumored to go to one place and then they're being rumored to another place. And, there's a few of these guys where if you go and look at the odds boards, you go, man, so these guys are a top candidate at 4 different schools for one job, one guy. Pretty sure they can't,
Yeah, can't be at 4 places at one time.
No, I don't think it works that way. Unfortunately, for some of them, I'm sure they would like the payday if they could stretch themselves out like that. But let's talk about the first domino to fall and the first big domino. And so this is one that going back a couple of weeks had been rumored, we had heard about, but then we'd also heard that Arkansas was the school that was in play for this guy. But ultimately, James Franklin, he is the first big domino to fall. As it was announced yesterday, that James Franklin has agreed to become the next head coach of Virginia Tech football. So he will be formally introduced tomorrow morning. They're going to hold a press conference there in Blacksburg to officially welcome him in as the next head coach there for the Hokies. And a big part of this as well, as if you remember, when Penn State parted ways with him a couple of months ago, he was owed a $49 million buyout. Well, because he was able to go and get, I guess, new employment so quickly, he was able to, him and Penn State negotiated a buyout down to $9 million. So instead of $49 million, they're going to pay him a $9 million buyout. But then you obviously look at what we assume his contract will be at Virginia Tech, and he's going to make more than that $49 million over the next 6 years of what the buyout payout would have been anyway. So he's going to end up making more money to go to work, but he's going to get to go to a Virginia Tech program that I think a lot of us know obviously has a proud history and has a history of success. And even in, the earlier parts of our life, Damien, they were a very, very good football program. But since, Frank Beamer left and left the program, it's been a little bit of rough sledding for them. But you have to feel like this is a team that they've said they're going to make a bigger investment financially in the football program. Let's be honest, you play in the ACC, so there's opportunities, right, to be competitive. You would think rather quickly here. So I think this is a home run for Virginia Tech. I'm going to be very interested to see what James Franklin is able to do there. But I think as far as them going out, getting one of the bigger fish in the coaching carousel and getting him early while everyone else is trying to scramble and figure out what to do, I think Virginia Tech did a really, really good job here.
Yeah, and he's at a place that they can be patient. It's not one of those things he has to flip it around immediately. There's not a lot of pressure on him to go in and, compete for national titles, college football playoff, that kind of conversation. But when you look at his resume, no matter how you feel about him, he's been a winner. He won at Vanderbilt before Clark Lee turned into one of the best programs in college football. But even at Penn State, the man, he was one game away from the college football national championship. Now, he ran across Notre Dame, he proved that they were better. But when you look at totality, he's pretty consistent when it comes to winning. It's just kind of the press conferences are going to be pretty interesting. He comes with a little bit of baggage, and not necessarily that it's bad, but he's going to he's going to have a big personality at a place that looks at themselves as, hey, like, we can compete. When we're up, we're up. And like you said, like, we've seen Virginia Tech, compete for conference championships, play in, big-time bowl games and things like that. So I think when you look at what the program is and who James Franklin is as a head coach, no matter how you feel about him, it seems like this is a recipe for success. It does feel like it's a right, quote-unquote, fit for where Virginia Tech wants to be. And like I said earlier, you can give this time. It's one of those things that, hey, he may win 7 games the first year, 8, 9 games the next year, and then within year 3, 4, you're kind of looking at Virginia Tech in a whole different light of, okay, like, this team could compete in the ACC, and we wouldn't be too far removed from him saying that, hey, James Franklin did this thing, and it worked. And I think that in totality, this is a good hire. It should work, and you're in a conference where, if anything, this past year has shown you that all it takes is one good year, and all of a sudden you're in contention for an ACC title, if not the college football playoff.
Yeah, so hopefully Virginia Tech in good hands now, we would think, with James Franklin. Certainly going to be, some more buzz around that program. And like I said earlier, their increased financial commitment, they have announced that they are going to add $229 million to the athletics budget over the next 4 years. So you just do some quick math. I mean, that's
okay,
over $55 million a year that they're going to be throwing into. And that's not just football, but still you have to imagine that is going to go a long way there, as James Franklin will take over at Virginia Tech. And an interesting note, he's actually taking over for his former defensive coordinator, because if you remember Brent Pry, that's where he came from, was Penn State. So back-to-back Penn State boys there for Virginia Tech, and we'll see how quickly he can get that thing turned around. So that's the first big domino to fall, in the sense of James Franklin's now off the board for a lot of these programs. But the biggest name out there for a lot of teams is obviously Lane Kiffin. And Lane Kiffin's been getting a lot of attention here over the last couple of days. We were talking about on the shows on Friday about how we had started to hear that, maybe things had started to turn a little bit, and it was looking a little more likely that Lane Kiffin would entertain leaving Ole Miss for either Florida or LSU and their head coaching vacancies. So it wasn't a big surprise to some people yesterday when it was reported. I saw this a bunch of places. I know The Athletic was one of the places that kind of had the first story out there. But the fact that Ole Miss has essentially issued an ultimatum of sorts to Lane Kiffin, in the sense that, hey, if you want to be here, that's great. We'd love to have you back, but we need a decision now. And if you're not going to come back, that's also fine. Best of luck in the future, but we're going to move on in a different direction, and we're not going to let you drag us along any longer. Because I think the rumblings just became too much. And, from what I understand, it's a situation where he has had a contract extension offered to him for a while now that he has not signed. And, if you're moving forward into a college football playoff, you probably want to do it with a person that's committed to the program. And, you don't want to set yourself up for a situation where if Lane Kiffin's distracted and he can't give his 100% to the job, then you're going to move on and try to find somebody in the interim that can do that. So the report says that, he basically has until the Egg Bowl next Friday to decide what he wants to do. Does he want to stay at Ole Miss? And if so, then he can coach in the Egg Bowl and he can coach the college football playoff. If he is interested in LSU or Florida, then that's going to be it. And you're going to see somebody else coaching the Ole Miss Rebels heading into their rivalry game and the college football playoff. So this is a very bizarre situation.
It is.
But it's
par for the course for Lane Kiffin.
Correct.
And that's what makes me so mad, because you think with age, you kind of, okay, he's mellowing out. Maybe he really does love Oxford. And it just feels as though, like, hey, man, look at what we've built here. Why would you – what more do you want
Ryan
from
McGee
us?
just did an entire documentary on the guy,
Man, what had
reporting about how much he loved Oxford, how different he was.
Pulling on the heartstrings, dog. It's like, man, you know what? Maybe Lane's changed. No. Whatever he has presented is exactly who he is. The man ain't nothing but a player. And it just – he's really treating Ole Miss like it's a side chick. It's kind of like, hey, man, what we got going on over here is pretty doggone good. What you doing dipping your toe down in Gainesville, going down to Baton Rouge. What do they have that we ain't got?
They've done everything that he's asked of them.
Everything.
Everything that he's wanted, he has gotten.
And he is in the process of having a statue built up in Ole Miss for him. Like he's trending in that direction. Now it's like, you know, family out here catching flights to Gainesville, going down to Baton Rouge, just kind of saying that, you know, just tell me what it's like down there. No, do not be this disrespectful, man. But the thing is, and the more we look at it of just where you are and where you have Ole Miss, you can sit here for as long as you want, as long as you're winning. We can tolerate it. Like, it's just stop. How about you have a little bit more decency, treat us with respect, and stop acting like we a side chick. Because if you go to Florida, the expectation is, boom, you got to win now, and there ain't no question about it. Same thing in Baton Rouge. And you know how Lane is off the field. He likes the entertainment value. I get it. I understand it. But I think where you are right now is where you've gotten Ole Miss. You're not going to get any better because you don't really have that much pressure. It's like, hey, man, we ain't ever seen this stuff before. Like, you don't wined and dined us and gave us the glitz and the glamour. Now you want to leave us high and dry. Because now, when you look at Ole Miss, when you do leave, the job is still attractive. It's, if I can just jump in and where Lane left off, if I'm, you know, a potential, you know, candidate or coach, it's, I can kind of jump in and ride this wave and see where it goes because y'all gave Lane Kiffin all this time and built it up to where it is. I can ride with this. So I just think that for Lane's sake, don't make any emotional decisions. Don't make any rash decisions. But truly look at where you are. And is the grass necessarily greener down in Gainesville or in Baton Rouge? Like, if you think the glitz and the glamour and the name to fame is so much better than what you got in Ole Miss, then so be it. But I think where you are right now is the best spot.
Yeah, I thought so too. But, I mean, some people, I guess, just want a bigger challenge or they, you know, I don't know. If he feels that, you know, he's better situated to go win and have success somewhere else, then more power to him. Again, I'd just say, and if you don't believe in this kind of stuff, I don't blame you at all. But does it not just seem like this would be the kind of thing where he would leave Ole Miss, they would make the playoff, and then wherever he goes, he would never make a college football playoff again? That's just one of those like weird circumstances that you could see being brought up down the road of, Lane Kiffin never recovered. He was like cursed from making a playoff after
right
that.
And think about the track record of the coaches, well, at least the past coach at LSU. They ain't even trying to give Brian Kelly his money. What you gonna do when they look at you and say, you know what, we're sick of you, but also you're owed $7 billion? They'll try to they'll cut your legs off below you. And then in Florida, I mean, Dan Mullen went to an SEC championship, multiple SEC championship. They fired him. And Billy Napier, they didn't give him time. So it's, man, you got it good right now. You really do. You've got the streets paved with gold there in Oxford, Mississippi. So to me, it just doesn't make sense for him to jump ship. But also, I mean, Lane Kiffin is also the same coach that was essentially fired before the national championship. Well, the college football playoff when he was at Alabama. It's like, hey, big dog, unless you are 100% committed, we ain't half-stepping around here. And I'm glad Ole Miss is like, nah, either you are coaching this team or you're not. If you're entertaining all this stuff, go ahead and make your decision. But you've got it made here. We've got the contract extension waiting on you. We're just waiting on you to pick up the pen and sign this thing.
Yeah, it's probably also not a, you know, again, whoever hires him, they're going to go out. It's not going to keep them from hiring him. But, you know, for somebody that's so in demand to have your own program basically say, hey, we love you and we think you're great, but no, we're not going to sit here and we're not going to beg for you. So it is what it is. So we'll see what the next
also, you
week.
Think you can fix DJ Lagway? Have you not? You just played against him. No, man, you can't fix that.
Yeah, there's a lot there. So we'll see what Lane Kiffin decides to do. But a big week coming up for Ole Miss as they wait on the decision from their head coach on what his future will look like. But we have some other coaches searching going on. How about LSU? What's the latest there from Baton Rouge outside of Lane Kiffin? Because we have a real candidate at the top of the odds list now. And no, it's not Nick Saban. We'll tell you the latest on what's going on with LSU as well. That's next on JOX. 6:35. Welcome back into Morning Jocks here. Conrad and Damian keeping you up to date on everything going on in the world of college football, as we've been talking a little bit of coaching carousel, as there was a lot of news yesterday coming out. First off, James Franklin, he has now been hired at Virginia Tech. He will be the new head coach there for the Hokies. So that's the first kind of domino to fall in this coaching carousel. A lot of news yesterday about Lane Kiffin and the fact that Ole Miss has, essentially offered him an ultimatum and said, hey, we need to know about your coaching future before the Egg Bowl, because if you're going to be here, that's great. And if you're not going to be here, that's also fine. But we're going to start moving ahead and we need you to go on, and we're going to start, figuring out what the next era or next phase of Ole Miss football looks like. You also had the news yesterday with LSU and Lane Kiffin, where you had reportedly Lane Kiffin or some of Lane Kiffin's family, that was on a plane down in Baton Rouge, and that the university had flown to pick them up and kind of bring them in to tour the city and the university and all of those sorts of things. You also had some rumors over the weekend about the same thing going on in Gainesville. So,
well, I kind of look at, his daughter is dating the Weeks boy down there in Baton Rouge, so maybe she just, asked her dad for the private jet to go down to Baton Rouge to see him for a day or so.
I'm sure that is not what they were doing, but yes, that is very possibly an excuse that you will hear brought up or used as cover at some point or another. So yeah, I mean, it very well may be. But so yeah, that's the latest with everything going on with Lane Kiffin. So again, a big week coming up here for Ole Miss. But for more on LSU, so we know, yes, if they could get Lane Kiffin, they would obviously be very happy about that. Reports coming out yesterday that Lane Kiffin and LSU, he has been offered or will be offered a deal by LSU that would make him the highest paid coach in college football. I don't think that's a big surprise to anybody, that just based on the demand of the moment, right, he's going to command top dollar. That's the leverage that he has as it stands right now. But a new name has actually appeared as the odds-on favorite there for the LSU coaching gig. And it's not Nick Saban anymore, because if you have been listening to the show, you know that for a while there, Nick Saban was legitimately the number one, I guess, or had the best odds of any candidate to be the next LSU football coach, even though we all knew that wasn't going to happen. But now a new name is at the top of the list, and it's Kenny Dillingham for LSU. So a bit of a surprise there. The Arizona State head coach, obviously, I think he's done a great job there. Took him to the college football playoff last year. Hasn't had the same success this year, but Sam Leavitt got hurt and he's been out for the season. And so some things going on there for Arizona State, but still, a respectable season for them. And I think that's a coach that a lot of us remember him from his time at Auburn, but you hear him talk and he's a younger guy that seems to be able to relate to the kids well, but he also seems to, have his priorities in the right place. And when you hear him speak, that's the guy. It's like, yeah, you know what? I'd want my kid to go play for somebody like a Kenny Dillingham. So not a surprise that he's been a candidate for some of this. I know a lot of people, wanted Auburn to kick the tires on him, and that's somebody that they would be interested in, potentially considering as a candidate there for that job. But kind of interesting that LSU, he's now listed as the favorite for that one. So I don't know what all necessarily goes into that. But if you're LSU, you could do a lot worse than Kenny Dillingham, to say the least.
Yeah. No, he would be a nice fit. Just because, his energy and, with their loss to Mississippi State, that does kind of put a damper on things. But when you look at what he was able to do with Cam Scatteraboo last year and have Arizona State in college football playoff and, competing blow to blow with Texas, and just the patience that they've had with him of, hey, just do what you do. And for a young coach, getting his first head coaching gig at his place where really and truly the expectation, they were expected to finish last in the Big 12, and then all he did was mess around and win that thing. So I think going down to Baton Rouge, because of just how tumultuous it had been with Brian Kelly, you're looking for a complete reset. Like, you're looking for a complete overhaul. And now the conversation of, 3 of the last 4 head coaches we've had here in the past 20, 25 years have won national titles. And Kenny Dillingham, for a young guy starting his career so early as a head coach, he, like you said, he gets the players. Like, he's a players guy. He knows this new age of college football and where it's going. And he's coached in the SEC. Like, he knows what it's like down here. And, you know, whether he was calling the plays or not when he was at Auburn, he knows what it's like to be in these moments. So if that is the name that ends up going down there, I think it would be a good fit. It's just, it can't LSU accept that, hey, he's young. This is his first year. Don't expect to be in the college football playoff in year one. But I do think that you have the ability to flip it around rather quickly because of where you are and just who he is as a head coach.
Yeah, so we'll see if Kenny Dillingham ultimately becomes the guy there. But according to BetOnline AG, at least, he was, at last check, the odds-on favorite there to be the next head coach there for LSU. Quick look around, though, as you look at some of the other jobs right now. Arkansas, the top guys for them. Ryan Silverfield at Memphis. He's has the best odds right now to be the next Arkansas coach, followed by Alex Golish and then Bobby Petrino. I know. Penn State right now, their odds-on favorite is Eli Drinkwitz to be the next head coach there at Penn State, followed by Brent Key and Brian Hartline. They're from Ohio State, their OC and longtime receivers coach.
I don't like that.
And for Auburn, as you know, again, the reason we haven't spent a lot of time on the Auburn coaching search here the last couple of days is it's still John Sumrall. That seems to be 1A and 1B, and until further notice, that's the way that it's going to change until he, either decides to stay at Tulane or go somewhere else. I think he's going to be that top guy for Auburn and John Cohen. But he is, according to BetOnline at least, he still has the best odds, followed by DJ Durkin. Alex Golish there has the third best odds for Auburn. And then once you get past that, we get into the Kenny Dillingham's, Brent Keys, Eli Drinkwitz of the world, Clark Lee in there as well, kind of in that group as well. But as far as everything I've heard and been told about the Auburn situation, it's until John Sumrall tells them no, it's going to be John Sumrall. And it seems like that's as soon as Tulane knows that they're not going to the college football playoff, or maybe once they find out they are, right, once that whole situation plays out and that season comes to an end, that's going to get – it feels like that's going to get done.
I don't like that Eli Drinkwitz to Penn State, though. I've grown to really like Eli Drinkwitz. Not to say I didn't like him.
He's entertaining.
He is. Mm-hmm. And what he's done at Missouri and the way that he's done it, it's just been kind of cool to watch. Like, he has fun just about everywhere he goes. I mean, he was on the last day of SEC Media Days, and he looks out in the crowd and is like, okay, well, appreciate all y'all that are still here, but, these are the three things we're not going to talk about. And it's kind of, he's a different type of coach, but his style and his demeanor, the way that he goes about it, it's kind of hard not to like him. And not like I said, not like I disliked him. Thought he was a little quirky, but then he starts winning, and it's okay. Yeah, I can rock with this. Like he's a player's guy, and you could tell, that with Missouri and the success he's had, especially these past 3 or 4 years, he's built this thing up to where it is. So his name even being mentioned as far as the historic success that Penn State has had over the years, it's interesting. But I don't want him out the SEC. I'll put it like that. I'm selfishly saying, like, don't take that job, Eli.
Well, we will see what ultimately happens for Penn State and Eli Drinkwitz, if he stays at Missouri, stays in the SEC, or maybe goes to a whole new conference altogether. But that is kind of your up-to-date look on everything going on in the coaching carousel and who is favored to go where, as a lot of things going to happen now in the next couple of weeks. And, who knows, according to John Cohen, if everything goes according to his plan, we'll have a new head coach there on the plains of Auburn 2 weeks from now. So we'll see how all of that progresses. But we have the third week of the college football playoff rankings. That's coming your way tonight, and some big changes expected, particularly for the Alabama Crimson Tide. So where do we expect Alabama to land tonight after the loss to Oklahoma? We'll break all that down for you next here on Morning Jocks. Well, welcome back into Morning Jocks here on your Tuesday morning. Conrad and Damian. And we appreciate you tuning in each and every day here on JOX as we continue the college football conversation. The college football playoff rankings coming out tonight for the third time so far this season, and we expect there to be some big changes, particularly with two teams, that being Oklahoma and Alabama. So the Sooners, after they get their upset victory over the Crimson Tide, how high will they rise, and how far will how far will Alabama fall when all is said and done? So I think it's pretty safe to say the top five or so is probably going to stay. It's probably going to stay put, right? You're going to have Ohio State, Indiana, Texas A&M, Georgia, Texas Tech. I would imagine Ole Miss right after them at 6. Then maybe Oregon at 7, and I would be shocked if that's any different. Maybe you have two of those teams flip-flopped or something there at 6 and 7 or something like that. But after that, that's where it starts to get interesting, right? Because I think at that point you start to look at, okay, Oklahoma, Alabama, and Notre Dame. How do those three teams stack up against each other? Obviously, Oklahoma will be ahead of Alabama because of the head-to-head victory. But my question really for tonight is, what do they do with Notre Dame, right? Is Notre Dame ahead of both of these teams? Is Notre Dame split in the middle? Or is Notre Dame behind both of these SEC teams? Because, again, when you particularly as it pertains to Notre Dame versus Alabama and that argument, Alabama, you would say they have a better resume based on their wins, right? They have 4 ranked wins, assuming Missouri is back in the rankings tonight like they are in the AP poll. But they would have 4 ranked wins. Notre Dame would have 1. They would have the USC win. That would kind of be their big one. I know Pitt was ranked, but now they're not going to be ranked, so it kind of is what it is there. But you have that advantage. However, Notre Dame has the advantage of they have 2 really good losses, whereas Alabama has 1 good loss and 1 really bad loss to Florida State. And Notre Dame also hasn't lost since the first 2 weeks of the season, right? So you can say, well, that's the old Notre Dame, whereas with Alabama now it's, okay, well, maybe the Florida State loss was the old Alabama, but we did just see them lose a couple of days ago, so that might hurt them. But I think that's kind of the big difference there is, do you see, in my personal opinion, I think it will be Oklahoma 8, Alabama 9, and Notre Dame 10. And I understand why Notre Dame could be ahead of them, but I guess in my perspective, I think it should be more important what your quality wins are than what the quality of your losses are, if everything else is the same, right? If we're talking about 2 2-loss teams and one team has, okay, well, maybe their losses are a little worse, but they have a much more impressive collection of wins, I think that should ultimately be valued more than, the team that maybe doesn't have great wins, but you just don't have a bad loss. That's my personal opinion. I know some people would disagree with that, but that's how I see it playing out tonight. So I'm going to predict Oklahoma 8, Alabama 9, Notre Dame 10, and then you'll have, I would assume Miami would still be 11 because they'll be the highest-ranked ACC team, and then it looks like James Madison probably going to be the Group of 5 team this week. So,
oh boy, it's going to be interesting.
That's what I think. Do you see it playing out that way? Where do you think Notre Dame will end up in relation to them?
Yeah, because I don't. Again, what's Notre Dame's biggest win? And like you said, the quality losses, they're great. But also, Alabama had to go through a stretch where they were facing, 4 straight ranked opponents, and they went out there and handled their business like they were supposed to. So, you can punish them for the recent loss, but when you look at the totality of their resume, when they played those teams, and for the most part, most of those teams are still ranked, those wins carry more weight because they help you. I don't necessarily think that a loss to a top 12 Oklahoma team should necessarily knock you out of the top 15. So I think that the wins in which they have completely outweigh what Notre Dame has done, yes, with those close losses, but who have they bolstered their resume against besides a Pitt team that was ranked last week?
Yeah, and I know because of head-to-head, it kind of, forces some things, but I guess I look at it like this. If Alabama was good enough to be your top-ranked 1-loss team with a loss to Florida State, then what does it matter if they're your top-ranked 2-loss team with a loss to Florida State when the other loss is to a playoff? It's like obviously it didn't affect you that much until now, and now, why is it the kind of the end-all be-all there for them? So we will see, though, when those rankings come out later tonight, what ultimately happens with Alabama. Have to imagine, again, you win your next 2 games, you're going to find yourself in the college football playoff, potentially in Atlanta as well. depending on how some of those tiebreakers go. As we know, a lot on the line as it depends on Arkansas and the Kentuckys and Floridas of the world and what happens with their results over the last couple of weeks. But going to be exciting again. GMAC going to be on the broadcast for that tonight, week 3 of the college football playoff rankings. So as you can see, a lot going on now. We got games coming up this weekend, but you've got just about every coaching rumor in the world flying around right now. You got the college football playoff rankings and just so much going on in the world of college sports. But that's why we love it, and that's what we bring to you each and every day here on JOX. So we're back tomorrow at 6 a.m. Appreciate you tuning in this morning. McElroy and Kublik in the morning is next.